A pregnant woman goes missing in a Chicago suburb. While her relatives try to find her, they are unaware that behind the disappearance is a ruthless killer whose main goal is to take the victim's baby and pass it off as their own. In this video, I will tell you about the case of Clarisa Figueroa. This story took place in Chicago, Illinois. In 2018, Clarisa Figueroa was 46 years old. She had 4 adult children, a son, a daughter, and twin daughters. She moved into mother's house after her first husband either died or they divorced. There is no exact information about his fate in public sources. Overall, she was a normal middle-aged woman and very active Facebook user, who often shared all her news and updates with friends and acquaintances. By 2018, Clarisa had a new boyfriend. It was Pete Bobak. Judging by his social media, they were a very loving couple, and Pete supported Clarisa in everything. However, a year before, a terrible tragedy struck Clarisa's life. Her 20-year-old son, Xander, passed away. He died of natural causes, and Clarisa had a very hard time coping with his death. Some time after that, she began acting strangely. Although her family and friends knew that she can't have kids now because she had her fallopian tubes tied, she started telling everyone that she's pregnant and soon she'll be a mother of a baby boy. When everyone who knew about the surgery were asking her about how it was possible that she's pregnant, she was answering with something vague about the doctors not doing the procedure properly, so her pregnancy was still possible. And she did not tell all of this only to her family members. By early 2019, she began posting on Facebook about her pregnancy, stating that she was expecting a baby boy and she had even chosen his name, Xander. So it was the same name as her deceased son had, which tells us a lot about Clarisa's motives for what she was planning to do. On February 5th, 2019, Clarisa made a post in which she shared a photo of a room and captioned it, "Baby Xander's crib is set up, now we're just waiting for your arrival." And her relatives left joyful comments under these posts. It could be thought that Clarisa's desire to have a child was her way of coping with the loss of her son, but it was unclear how could she be pregnant at all. Some of her friends and neighbors thought that Clarisa is just acting weirdly because she recently had lost her son and is suffering from some psychological issues. And in reality they were right. Clarisa could not be pregnant. However, everything she was doing and telling was not accidental. And she actually planned something very sinister, and all she was doing then was just the beginning of her horrific plan. And no one knew about it except her boyfriend Peter Bobak and her daughter Desiree Figueroa. And now she was just putting her plan into action. Around this time, she started actively engaging with members of a Facebook group for pregnant women or for those who recently gave birth. This group was called Help a Sister Out. In this group, women discussed childbirth, gave each other advice, asked questions, and provided support. It was entirely normal for women who had given birth a few years earlier to remain in the group to support those who were still expecting. When these women had baby items that they no longer needed, they would offer them for free to women who were about to give birth. In this group, Clarisa created a thread where she asked who was due to give birth in May. She claimed that she had given birth a little earlier and was planning to give away items she no longer needed. 19-year-old Marlene Ochoa Lopez responded to this message. She was due to give birth on May 10th. In her message, Marlene wrote, "Hello ladies, I'm due in May 10th, and I still need a lot of things for my son. Due to the fact that I'm in school and can't work at the moment, I can't afford to buy the rest of the things since I'm short on cash right now." Marlene was originally from Mexico and moved to the United States when she was still an infant. She was the eldest child in her family and had 3 siblings. At this point, she already had a 3-year-old son, and since she was studying and not working, buying items for her future baby was a significant expense for her. The Facebook group provided an opportunity to save a lot of money with the help of kind people. But unfortunately, Clarisa had no intention of helping anyone. Her goal was to find someone who was due to give birth during May of 2019. After a short Facebook exchange, Clarisa and Marlene continued their communication through private messages. Shortly after it, Marlene visited Clarisa's home for the first time. It was on April 1st, and on that day, Clarisa gave her some baby clothes for free. So she probably planned this meeting to get a closer look at Marlene. Because she talked to her through Facebook, she knew that Marlene was due to give birth only in the middle of May, so if Clarisa wanted to do something now, the baby probably wouldn't have survived, as it was more than a month before the due date. So at this point she was just establishing connection, but her attack was planned later, at the end of April. She invited Marlene to her home second time. It was April 23rd. We don't know exactly what excuse she came up with to invite Marlene again. Maybe she told her that she has some more baby clothes to give to her, or maybe she was just pretending to be her friend and just invited her to talk or spend time together. And after the first meeting, Marlene probably didn't suspect anything and thought that Clarisa is just a very kind woman who wants to help. When Marlene arrived at Clarisa's home, she was met not only by Clarisa but also by her daughter Desiree. At some point, while Desiree was distracting Marlene by showing her family photos in an album, Clarisa quietly snuck up behind her. At this point, she had a cable in her hands that she prepared beforehand, and when she was exactly behind Marlene's back, she wrapped a cable around her neck and started strangling her. Marlene was able to put her fingers under the cable, and because of this, Clarisa couldn't strangle her at this point. Marlene just didn't lose consciousness. Then Clarisa allegedly told her daughter Desiree that she was, quote-unquote, not doing her job. And Desiree allegedly joined the struggle and removed Marlene's fingers from the cord, one by one, effectively depriving her of any chance to resist. Before doing all of this, they had turned up the music in the room in case the victim would start screaming. Then Clarisa allegedly got on top of Marlene and strangled her for 5 minutes. And the saddest thing is that Clarisa's dog was just curious and she approached Marlene, trying to see what was happening. And the last thing Marlene did before she died was trying to reach and touch the dog's nose. We don't know why she did this. Maybe she was reaching for the dog, hoping that somehow the dog could help her. Then Clarisa and Desiree used Google to check if they did everything in a way so Marlene had no chance of surviving. After it was believed that Marlene was dead, Desiree brought a bedsheet, a plastic bag, and a large kitchen knife. She left all of this in the room, and after she did so, Clarisa used a knife to get Marlene's baby. Now her goal was achieved. She had the baby she desired. Then the perpetrators wrapped Marlene's body in a plastic bag. Clarisa carried it out herself and disposed of it in a trash can located in the courtyard of her home, hidden behind a fence near the garage. Now all she had to do was to convince everyone that this was her own child, and no one except her daughter Desiree and her boyfriend Peter would know otherwise. But after everything was done, Clarisa noticed that Marlene's baby wasn't breathing. So she immediately called an ambulance and told that she just gave birth and that the baby is in a bad condition. And she was waiting for the paramedics outside in her yard, holding baby on her hands. When ambulance was arriving, even Clarisa's neighbors noticed that the baby was covered in placenta and umbilical cord was still attached. But Clarisa's legs were dry and clean, so it was strange how it was possible that she just gave birth and looked like this. But for some reason, paramedics didn't pay attention to that, or maybe they just didn't care enough. They took the baby to the hospital where he was put on life support. The doctors who examined Clarisa afterward found no signs that she had recently given birth. However, for some reason they did not immediately contact the police. Meanwhile, Marlene's husband Giovanni filed a missing person report on April 24th, the day after her murder, and from that moment the police began searching for Marlene. Meanwhile, doctors were fighting for Marlene's baby's life, but the chances of his recovery were slim, since doctors did not report to the police that Clarisa might have brought someone else's baby to the hospital, or maybe they didn't even consider that. Clarisa was able to continue pretending to be a loving mother. She was posting photographs on Facebook, accompanied by captions about how much she loved her newborn and hoped he would recover. Her husband Peter also made posts about this on social media. It seemed the criminals couldn't behave more disgustingly and immorally But when they realized that the baby likely wouldn't survive, they created a GoFundMe page. Initially, they claimed that it was for the baby's medical treatment, but later they started writing that they needed financial help for the funeral. At this point, they already didn't care if the baby survived or not. They just wanted to get some cash for it. They even managed to raise several $1,000s through this fundraiser before it was later shut down. Meanwhile, the police detectives were investigating Marlene's disappearance, and after reading her Facebook messages, they identified Clarisa as likely being the last person who saw Marlene. They went to Clarisa's address to speak with her. There, they were told that Clarisa was in the hospital because she had recently given birth. Discovering that Marlene's car was abandoned half a block from the Figueroa home, the police went to the hospital. They talked to the doctors. Obviously, doctors told them everything about how Clarisa arrived, so the detectives had even more suspicions against her, and they conducted a DNA test, which Clarisa didn't know about. After finding out that the baby didn't belong to her, the police detectives obtained a search warrant to search Figueroa's home. At this point, Clarisa was posing as the mother of Marlene's baby for almost 3 weeks. There they found Peter, who was trying to clean the living room of bloodstains with bleach, likely realizing by then that they were suspects and trying to hide everything in panic. When he saw the officers, he reportedly dropped the bleach and hose and just walked away. Marlene's body shortly after it was found in the trash can where Clarisa had placed it on the day of the murder. Under the weight of the evidence, Desiree Figueroa testified against her mother, detailing how the crime was committed. Giovanni Lopez was able to hold his son, whom he also named Giovanni, before the baby passed away 52 days after his birth. Peter Bobek pleaded guilty to the obstruction of justice in January of 2023. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, and most of the time he already spent in custody. Desiree Figueroa pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. She gave birth to her own baby in prison in 2019. She also reached a plea deal with prosecutors in exchange for testifying against her mother, even though Clarisa Figueroa later opted not to stand trial. On April 16, 2024, Clarisa Figueroa pleaded guilty for the murder of Marlene Ochoa Lopez, and she got sentenced to 50 years in prison without possibility of parole. So considering that she's 46 years old, she almost have no chance to get out of prison.